All right, we're going to continue on campaigns today and talk a little bit more about the preview options and some of the things you can do with testing. So with that, I'll jump into preview and we can see what this looks like. So in preview mode for a campaign, we're going to show you the from text, the from email, the subject line, and then not specified here, this would be your pretext or your pre-header text. So if you have it specified, then it'll show up here. Then we have the body of the email. So this is the email you designed as it'll be presented to the user. So we can see both the HTML version or we can go into the text version of the email. We automatically generate the text version of the email, so you don't have to worry about that. But the text version of the email is generated for accessibility. So people that have a hard time either reading or viewing the HTML version can have that text version that they can use a reader to read those emails to them. So then we have, you can export this out to a PDF. So if you just need a copy of what this email looks like, you can always download the PDF version. Otherwise, in preview, we have several different modes that you can view this in. So where this comes in handy is just to look at the email as it would be displayed on various devices. So if we're on a tablet, we can see what this looks like in a tablet. In portrait mode, go to a tablet in landscape mode. I can skip over to a mobile device, see what this looks like in portrait, and I can see what it looks in landscape. So these are all actual renderings. This is how it would be rendered on those devices. So it makes it kind of nice to see. So now if I go down here, I've got a blank right here. It says Dear Blank. So now if I go over to my customer, I can update this preview and you can see that I didn't handle there being no data for the first name. So that's why it shows as blank. Now I can go back to my editor and in the editor video, we'll go over that and show you how that works to set up a default in case you don't have a first name for a user or for a contact. So anyway, so I can go through there and I can navigate to the different people in here, find one that I want to see. I can update the preview and it's going to update the preview with their information. Now this update does more than just the mail merge stuff of just showing the personalization. I call it mail merge. There's personalization. There's dynamic content. There's a bunch of different names. Dynamic content and personalization are a little bit different. So personalization just adds a data field in. You can kind of think of it in Microsoft Word days, they called it mail merge. Now it's personalization within an email. Dynamic content is that logic. So you can have logic wrapped around a word, around a paragraph, around an image, around a chunk of content, what have you. You can put logic around it that says if certain criteria is met in the customer's profile or their past behaviors, then show this or hide this content. So you could do that. So then based on a customer's profile, when I hit the update, it's going to look at their profile, it's going to run all the logic, and it'll show you exactly what this email is going to look like for this particular contact. Now, if you're using dynamic content and you don't have the exact profile that you're wanting to test for, especially with those different logic things, you can always go into custom, put in whatever content I want. So I can put in John. And the email address, I could say john at smith.com. I know, real original. But I could put that in, hit update, and that's going to put John and have his information. Now I don't believe that we have the email address in there, so it's not going to show their email address, but we do show the name. So you can base things off of a custom profile or based on an actual contact and look at all their contacts. And this shows all the contacts that are in the list of people that are going to receive this email, which we'll go over that in a little bit. So this is kind of how you test that, or how you can preview it here. This will eliminate the need to constantly send out test emails to yourself to see what the personalization looks like. We just give that to you here. Now the next thing you can do is actually run a test. So you could send a test email to yourself. Now, I know myself, when I send out test emails and I get that email Maybe I'm just a little high strung or something, who knows? But I get nervous that maybe I sent a production email. So to accommodate for that, we have this little checkbox that you can add the word test to the subject line. So we're going to append that to the beginning of the subject line. That way you know that it's a test email. And so the subject line won't look exactly how production is because it's going to have that word test in there, but at least you know that it's a test. Then I can click next, and then I can go to some other things here. So I can use a current profile. I can search for a user or for a contact. I can find that contact and use their profile for the test email. Otherwise, I can do that custom, kind of like when we did the preview here. So I can select custom and search for somebody that way. So I'm just going to search for me, and I'm going to pick, I'll pick this guy here. And I'm going to hit next, and then I can also turn on profile defaults. So this would be defaults that are set up within the data field. So if in the data field you have first name and you put in a default for customer, and maybe that's the value if it's blank, you can use that. Then I can go in here and I can set, this is how you define who is going to receive this email. So I can put in just a huge list. So if I put in Jason at johnson.com, I could do that and just hit tab or hit enter. And then I can add a bunch of email addresses to this. The other thing I can do is if you have a test audience set up, I can clear that out, or I can also just include that. And I can have a send test, or I can do my team. So I can select a group or segment that I want to send this to and for the test, and then click send, and it sends it off. So it's that simple, but this allows you to really test the email with various different things, send it out to a group of people that may email you back and give you approval or whatnot. But that allows you to send those tests out and really test what's going on. Now, when you get ready to send, when we created the email, we selected the audience. But what we could do in here is I can click on that number, and then for this audience, I can say the entire audience, or I can do select groups and segments. So then I can find all the different groups in here, and we list out the groups and the segments. So you could just move over various groups and segments in here. And I can, maybe I want to add this guy. So I can either drag it over, usually the easiest way. And I can bring all these guys over, and it's going to now send to this group of people. So in this particular case, this has 0 contacts in there. So I might say, okay, well, I don't have anybody for these. So I'm just going to send maybe to my team. And my team, I've got 1 contact in there. So this, as you drag things over, as you drag these groups and segments over, the number of contacts will also update accordingly to make sure that you know exactly how many contacts you'll be sending to. And this number at the top, once I click save, this number at the top is also going to update. For right now, we're just going to leave it. Now, when I click send, so I know it's going to 28 people. I can pick my send time, and then I can pick the to use time jumper. All time jumper does, it says that if we know the contact's time zone, if I want it to be sent at 8 in the morning, I can send it at 8 in the morning in everybody's time zone. So if you're going to do that, you may want to make sure you schedule it maybe 24 hours in advance, because some people's time zone, their hours are off quite a bit compared to yours, especially on the other side of the world. So you'll want to make sure you give enough time so the system can do it correctly. But we get their time zone based on various things that they do. So we try to get their time zone in an automated fashion. Otherwise, you can always update it or import it yourself into our system. But anyway, otherwise, you could set the date, you could set the time that you're going to send it, or you can set it to send right now, and then click send. And once you do that, it sends it off. So the send process is really, really easy. So you can always use that. Now, the other thing you can do in here is you can mark it as ready. So if you know that the email is ready to go, you've tested it, everything's good, but you're not ready to schedule it yet, you haven't gotten the time or what have you haven't gotten some information, maybe you're waiting for stuff on the website or what have you. So you may need to just mark it as ready. That way, at least you know it's ready to send, but you haven't scheduled it yet. So you can mark it as ready to send. Then on the list page or on the calendar, you'll be able to see those. You can also go back to the various versions. So we keep track of all the versions. So as you save, we're going to have versions that are available for you. If you have multiple people working on an email, instead of having to refresh this whole window or navigating back and forth, you can just select refresh. So if I select refresh, it's going to refresh the content on the page so you can see changes that somebody else made on their desktop versus yours. The only other thing I didn't go over here was the autosave. So if you turn autosave on, then anytime I make changes, it's going to automatically save for me. So you don't have to worry about it saving, it does it on its own. Now, the other nice thing that we have in our tool is that if for any reason your browser crashes, I know it probably never happens to you, but it's happened to me. So if a browser crashes and you're right in the middle of adding all this content in, you've spent a bunch of time, well, when your browser crashes and you open it back up and you go back into our system, we're going to detect that your browser crashed and your content is not lost. So we will ask you if you want to recover your content, and we'll recover it from your machine. So we always save a copy of everything you're doing in real time to your machine, to a safe area that the browser lets us save it to. So we will save it and always make sure that you never lose your content. So whether you have to restore it from your machine or, in this case, it auto saves, it'll always be on the server, you're good to go. You can always click save manually if you want. That's no problem. So you can click save whenever you want. That makes you feel more comfortable. Otherwise, it's going to auto save and it lets you know. It'll actually change this number of contacts. It'll change that right now in preview mode, so it won't do it. But when I'm in the editor, then you'll see this contacts changed to the last time it was saved. And it'll briefly show that and it'll go back to your number of contacts. But just so you know that feature is available to you. So that kind of gives you the basics of a campaign, how you manage it and how you send it, how you test it, preview it. Gives you a lot of information on there. Future videos, we're going to be going over multivariate testing and what that means. We're going to go over RSS emails, AMP emails, HTML, and plain text. So those are just other things we're going to go over, and then also the campaign report, because that's where you get to see the results or the fruits of your labor, really. So with that, if you have any questions, please reach out to us in a number of different manners that you can find on our website, or respond to this or put in a comment to this video, what have you. However you can get a hold of us, please do ask whatever questions you have, and we'll be sure to answer them to the best of our ability. Until then, hope you have a great day. Thank you.